In 1528, a group of Spanish explorers washed up along the Gulf Coast, sick, starving, half dead, and probably reconsidering several major life decisions. European exploration is often remembered through paintings of heroic men staring toward the horizon. The actual experience involved shipwrecks, disease, terrible navigation, hunger, and dying thousands of miles from home. And more people kept coming. Spain wanted gold, territory, converts, and imperial power. France wanted trade. England wanted land. Everybody had a different reason for crossing the Atlantic, and all of them wanted something already occupied by somebody else. Spain moved first. Spanish expeditions entered the Americas with horses, steel weapons, priests, soldiers, and royal orders. Conquistadors searched for wealth. Missionaries searched for converts. The crown claimed territory. Indigenous nations already had governments, economies, religions, alliances, and wars of their own. European expansion crashed into that existing world. Then, disease arrived. Smallpox, measles, and influenza tore through indigenous communities with terrifying speed. Entire villages disappeared, sometimes before Europeans themselves reached them. Trade routes carried disease farther than soldiers could march. One of the strangest survivors of this period was Álvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. His 1528 expedition collapsed spectacularly. Ships vanished, supplies disappeared, men died. Cabeza de Vaca eventually reached what is now Texas and spent roughly 8 years traveling through indigenous lands. 8 years wandering the North American landscape. He experienced starvation, enslavement, exposure, and violence. He also learned indigenous languages and customs, worked as a trader, and gained a reputation as a healer. When he returned to Spanish territory, he encouraged negotiation and peaceful conversion. Spain developed systems such as the encomienda, which gave colonists control over indigenous labor and tribute. Native workers farmed, produced goods, and mined silver that helped finance one of the most powerful empires on Earth. France followed a different path. The French became obsessed with beaver pelts because Europeans really wanted fashionable hats. This sounds ridiculous until you remember how often human beings reorganize economies around whatever rich people suddenly decide looks good. French traders formed alliances with indigenous nations throughout the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence region. They exchanged cloth, metal tools, guns, and manufactured goods for furs. Those guns changed politics. A nation with access to European firearms gained an advantage over its rivals. Those rivals searched for European allies of their own. Old conflicts acquired new weapons, and the fur trade became tangled with diplomacy and warfare. A fashionable hat in Paris could help fuel a war near Lake Huron. History gets weird like that. Then England showed up and demonstrated that Europeans were perfectly capable of creating disasters themselves. The settlement of Roanoke disappeared from the face of the earth. Founded in 1607, Jamestown suffered from disease, contaminated water, food shortages, and terrible planning. Many settlers searched for precious metals while food supplies collapsed. The English could write the book on poor agricultural strategy. During the starving time of 1609 and 1610, colonists ate horses, dogs, rats, leather, and eventually other human beings. Jamestown survived because tobacco became profitable. Tobacco created money. Money attracted settlers. Settlers wanted land. Expansion brought conflict. English colonies spread along the Atlantic coast and developed representative assemblies, private property, local government, and legal traditions that later influenced the United States. The Virginia House of Burgesses appeared in 1619. That same year, Africans arrived in Virginia. Over the following decades, racial slavery hardened into law and became deeply embedded in the colonial economy. Americans would spend centuries talking about liberty while deciding exactly who qualified for it. All of these changes belonged to the Columbian Exchange. Europe received corn, potatoes, tomatoes, cacao, and tobacco. The Americas received horses, cattle, pigs, wheat, and sugar. The potato helped European populations grow. Horses transformed hunting, transportation, and warfare across parts of North America. Sugar created enormous fortunes. Tobacco created enormous numbers of addicts. Disease created cemeteries. Smallpox, measles, and influenza killed millions of indigenous people. Communities lost farmers, parents, children, political leaders, healers, storytellers, and generations of accumulated knowledge. Meanwhile, the Atlantic slave trade carried millions of Africans across the ocean in chains. Their forced labor generated wealth that moved through plantations, ports, merchants, banks, and European governments. By the 17th century, the Americas had become a collision point between indigenous nations, European empires, enslaved Africans, global trade, religion, disease, and political ambition. Spain built an empire. France built trading networks. England built permanent colonies. People living through this period chased immediate goals: gold, furs, land, salvation, power, survival. They had no idea they were constructing pieces of our world. That is one of history's favorite tricks. People make decisions because they want something on a random Tuesday. 400 years later, everybody else is still dealing with it.